This is a weird one because I've already reviewed Blinx, the Time Sweeper. I hated it back then, but I also wasn't the same person that I am today. I like to think that I'm a lot more of a chill individual who's matured quite a bit since my first review video. I wanted to remake the Blinx video with an older eye because thinking back, I made that video with certain inspirations that I don't really agree with today, but I also just don't think that video was well made. I remember being very nervous about making the first review, and I had this misconception that reviewing anything just meant complaining about everything, and somehow that makes it good. It is not. It sucks. That video also no longer exists, because it sucks. We play as Blinx the cat. He's a time sweeper. Their whole deal is to clean up anomalies in the space-time continuum in order to keep it flowing as normal. There's a gang of pigs called the Tom Tom Gang who steal time and sell it. The gang has stolen so much time from this one particular realm that it's begun to collapse, and the Time Sweepers recall everybody working in that sector so it can be quarantined and cut off from the other timelines. They've also kidnapped a human woman for some reason, which is the entire reason Blinx runs headfirst into the collapsing realm. Boner power makes everybody stupid. The very first thing I want to address is the music. It's incredibly hit or miss. Some of it I'm fully willing to vibe to. I find myself thinking about it in the car or at work. It's genuinely really good. And then there are the misses that are so all over the place that I can only describe them as wacky, and it makes me want to tear my ears off and fully commit to a life of complete deafness. I want this song playing at my funeral so everybody knows what drove me to this point. The layout of every stage has 3 levels to complete, one shop with its very own item pool separate from the other shops, and a boss. The goal of each level is to defeat every single enemy and reach the end in under 10 minutes. This normally isn't a problem until later, but I'll get there. Throughout each level is a bunch of trash that we can suck up into a vacuum and shoot out at enemies. The biggest issue in a lot of these levels is the frame rate. At the start of each level, the frame rate feels like it's jumping between 10 and 15 frames per second, which is likely due to the size of the level and number of entities within it. As you clear the level of enemies and pick up trash, the frame rate stabilizes. This does something kinda cool that I don't think the developers even considered. The goal is to clean up this realm of the time anomalies, the monsters that showed up as a result of the Tom-Tom stealing so much time. And each time we clean up the streets of trash and kill the monsters, the frame rate improves, which can give off the impression that we're actually seeing the effects of our actions through the game itself. I think this was totally unintentional and probably says more about me than anything else, like how I think way too much about shit that doesn't actually matter. But it's kinda neat. One point I remember bringing up before was enemy design. I said it looked stupid, and it does. But while we're on the topic of overthinking and level design, I want to pull enemies in and tackle this all at once to explain such a cavalcade of thoughts and feelings regarding them. A lot of levels and enemies seem to have no design cohesion. The level designs can be chalked up to being a platformer from the early 2000s. It didn't have to make a ton of sense, but most of the enemies don't scream time monster to me when I look at them. The words that come to mind are snot, jester, hot air balloon, squid, molduga, slug. Slug actually does scream time monster, though. We can blame the snail for that. Speaking of, by the way, have you looked behind you recently? To get quasi-philosophical for a second, the face value designs of just about every enemy is just wacky. The music on a lot of these stages I describe as wacky. I don't know if that was the intention. It probably was, considering this was the Xbox's attempt to making a mascot platformer for children, and children like wacky random shit, according to someone somewhere in a suit. Probably the same guy that made the Cat in the Hat film. I don't think you can just throw a bunch of randomly designed enemies and characters into a melting pot, add some crazy sounding music, and call it wacky. The definition of wacky is something slightly odd or peculiar in an amusing way. And while they're not putting candied red and white stripes everywhere to really drive home the impression that they're trying to be wacky, everything else is pointing me towards this conclusion that they want things to be a little wacky. I don't think what they did can be considered a good interpretation of wacky. If you'd like to see a good impression of wacky, look no further than Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, the Animaniacs. Even a few animes out there have their fair share of things I'd consider wacky, like the entirety of Bo 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 Bo. The difference in their wackiness versus that of Blinx lies in the design and the ability of each character that allows them to do something unexpected. From Jerry pulling random pies out of his ass to throw at Tom, fingerprints, or Bobobo having his nose hairs do literally anything. The point is that the viewer doesn't expect the punchline, nor can they accurately guess what's going to happen next, and it has to be weird. Simply rounding a corner and showing someone a picture of a little green blob that also comes in other colors sometimes next to a weird moose wizard thing standing on a ball and calling it wacky isn't really wacky, it's just weird. Boss design suffers the same issue in at least 3 different bosses that are just upscaled normal enemies with Groucho Marx glasses and numbers tattooed onto them. Though, maybe that's the point. Maybe the idea is that we're not meant to understand what exactly it is that we're looking at. Time is meant to be falling apart all around us. Reality is unfolding. But what exactly does that mean? How does one describe the collapse of reality, the collapse of the collective human experience? Who's to say that as reality crumbles all around us, that the only thing we'd truly be able to perceive are basic colors and shapes with no cohesion or sense? What does it mean to live in a world where 2 + 2 = blue? I don't know, I don't fucking live there. Nearly a decade later and I still think the enemies look dumb as shit. The only enemy that I really have an appreciation in both design and theme are the random Tom Gang encounters. They're already established as the main antagonistic force that have a reason to be in the same collapsing realm. They're there to steal Lucky Charms and make money. Beating them when you see them grants you access to all of the cash and Lucky Charms in the area. It would be better if the time monsters were more of a secondary force akin to a force of nature, something that's just happening simultaneously, instead of being presented as the main threat. It's almost as if the Tom-Toms get pushed to the side for a majority of the game while we play cleanup. They're present in some levels, popping their heads in on occasion with the girl to remind us, oh yeah, cat boner. And I don't want to be thinking of that. I don't want to be reminded of that. I'm not Shane Dawson. Still on the topic of enemies, I don't know if it's more to do with the sweeper and how it functions, or it has something to do with enemy hitboxes. Wouldn't surprise me if it was a little of both. Sometimes when you shoot trash at an enemy, it'll just pass right through them, or stop just short of them. Either way, no damage is being dealt. This isn't too big of an issue in the first couple of levels because every enemy dies in one hit and the levels are really short. But as we get further into the game, the levels increase in length, complexity, enemy count, and the enemies get tougher, sometimes taking 3 or more hits to kill. After hitting an enemy, they'll be invulnerable for a couple of seconds, which in a game where you have to finish each level in under 10 minutes, time is of the essence. I already don't like having a 10-minute timer to finish a level. It leaves little time to explore and get familiar with the layout of the level or find secrets. It leaves the player thinking the only thing that you have to do is find the next enemy and keep moving forward. This leads to another issue with the sweeper. Bombs are some of the most frustrating trash items to use. If you hit an enemy with a bomb, it'll blow instantly. Otherwise, it'll explode after a few seconds. I found it hard to predict if the bomb will connect with the enemy and explode immediately, or if it'll just stop short and explode later. This would often lead me to taking a hit because I could never predict what that bomb was going to do. And if I just so happened to be close when it connected with an enemy, that's a lost retry. Sometimes they just decide to put bombs at the forefront of every level. The theme is bombs, and bombs have been placed on literally every pathway, and they're the only trash that's available to use. Put that alongside a potentially glitchy sweeper or glitchy enemy hitboxes, and I was left feeling frustrated and stressed that every missed shot that wasn't my fault is costing me precious time to complete the level. Speaking of time, we can control it, in a sense. Throughout the level, and dropped by enemies, are the Lucky Charms marshmallows. Nearly 10 years later, and it's the most apt description I can give these things. Collecting 3 charms of the same shape will grant you a guaranteed power-up upon collecting the 4th. Collect the 4th charm of the same charm, and you'll get 2 of that charm's power-up. My opinion regarding the most useful charms hasn't changed all too much, but I do see the value in every charm nowadays. Pause and slow are the most useful altogether. Rewind is nice if you want to find secret cat tokens, or scat tokens as I like to call them. Fast forward is nice if you're farming a level that's easy for the sake of cash. And record is incredibly situational. While record is the coolest of the power-ups and has the most potential, it's used only once or twice in the entire game. All the power-ups do exactly what you think they'll do, but record is a little different. It allows you to record your actions up to a certain point, and then it'll rewind and take you back to the point when you pressed record. Then an echo will follow the exact path you just took, leaving you to do whatever you want somewhere else. I'm incredibly interested in the logistics of record. Let's say you eat Taco Bell on record, and then during the playback, the recorded echo is eating the taco. Do you still have the taco? Has the taco been duplicated? Do you taste the taco as it's being eaten? Will you get the shits after the echo has eaten the taco, though you still have an uneaten taco in your hands? Would you believe me if I told you that I'm not high? Either way, as useful as they can be, some are required to complete certain levels. That's not an issue by itself. Sometimes it's the needing of a certain power to complete a level and just not having it, because the act of collecting power-ups is yet another task that can feel incredibly tedious. Say you need a record, but you don't have one. There are no green charms currently on the level that you're in. That means you have to go back to the previous level to collect enough green charms for at least one record power. Maybe two if you want to play it safe. The smart thing to do is to use your power-ups often enough so that they don't get overwritten when picking up a new one. Though sometimes it's tedious to just collect them, as in the actual act of collecting them, since they can become stuck together, making it impossible to pick up one charm that you need, but not the other one that'll result in a bad charm combo. There's nothing in it for you if you collect Star Star Moon Triangle. You just get a bowl of marshmallows with nothing to show for it. Speaking of farming, the shop can be expensive. Sweeper upgrades cost 2,000 gold minimum, more if you want any of the better ones in the later shops. There are also retry slot upgrades and time slot upgrades to hold more slots of each. We start out with only 3 of each, but 1 capsule of each can be purchased in every shop for about 1,300 gold altogether. A first run of each stage should leave you with enough to buy both, but not much else. I don't have a problem with farming, especially if the game is fun, but I can only hear the same song enough times before wanting to resurrect Attila the Hun to pull my ears in different directions. A while ago, I mentioned scat tokens. Their namesake isn't because I have a tendency to combine the first letter of the first word with the second word. It's because they do jack shit. Some games have secrets that do cool things when you go out of your way to collect them. I've deduced that scat tokens don't do anything worthwhile. You do get prizes, but they're genuinely worthless.
Please clap.
See, when you go out of your way to collect a thing, sometimes the reward is that of the number go up. The number go up is important because higher number better. But this game is already frustrating the hell out of me, but I've resolved to beat it this time. Oh yeah, I never beat it. I got so frustrated that I relegated Blinx to the land of shit never to be touched again. But I'm a different person than I was when I first played this. Not that different, but a little different. Is there anything positive that I could bring up? I'd like to think so. I love the concept of Blinx. It's very early 2000s with its type of plot. It reminds me of Ape Escape in that manner. But instead of capturing monkeys, we're killing snot monsters. It's not as charming as monkeys, but the basic formula is the same. I like that the shops have different item pools. It gives hints as to what you'll need moving forward in terms of equipment. I like how much there's to say about Blinx in general. In a world where there are, frankly, too many games that genuinely have nothing going on in them, games that are almost identical in terms of look and feel, games that are built solely for profit over the love of creation, it's nice to have something to talk about that isn't trying to be the next big hit anymore. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of really good games out there today, but there are barely any time to sit and talk about them when people are so ready to hate them and move on to the next thing just because they exist and be done with it. There's no discussion, there's no back and forth as to why a game is good or bad. It's decided instantly from the moment it's announced whether one will like it, and then we move on to the next thing that they announce. I think that's why I love retros, good or bad. They've been around long enough that nobody's talking about them, and nobody in the industry seems to want to. They're being forgotten. I have a pretty big library of PS2 games that I know nobody talks about, and they have some amazing moments that are worth discussing. Good or bad is up to you. But they've been around long enough and had enough time to breathe that putting them back out there in name alone is really fun for me. That's something that Blinx has allowed me to realize, even though I don't like it. If there's one good thing that replaying Blinx has taught me, it's that there's nothing wrong with retrying something you don't like just to see if there's something you missed, to get another perspective. You may discover that nothing's changed, that you still don't like it, but the experience will teach you something about yourself that you didn't know. I'm not the exact same person I was during my first video. Who I am now is a collection of thoughts and opinions that have been formed and tested by the world around me. I still share a lot of the same memories as the man who reviewed this a decade ago, but I've since made thousands of new memories, made some incredible friends, lost some people. I've learned hosts of new things to compare alongside the old and decide which that I value more. What I've learned, and what Blinx has reminded me, is that time is the only thing that's real. Friends come and go, family is born and family dies, and money is ultimately worthless beyond practicality, but time is the only thing you can never get back when it's gone. They say the definition of insanity is to do the exact same thing over and over again, expecting things to change. I like to think of that definition to be the definition of practice, because if you get good enough at something, then you get better, and sometimes things change because of that. It's an adage that tries to get one to do something else to achieve their desired outcome, and that's not a bad idea either. But sometimes you just have to try the same thing again in order to discover something new, to discover something that you missed the first time. How can you try something new if you don't know what you did wrong in the first place? Okay, I'm done yapping about nothing. Normally this is where I would end the video, but I'm resolved to finish Blinx this time because I still don't know who this girl is supposed to be. It's at this point that I've reached about as far as I had when I stopped last time. Everwinter is everything I've talked about regarding enemy hitboxes and sweeper aim just not working sometimes, and some things that I've neglected to mention all come together to be this cavalcade of nonsense that makes life more frustrating than it has to be. The thing that I've neglected to mention is that the camera soft locks to any nearby enemy in an attempt to let the player know that there is, in fact, an enemy, and ideally it's to make it easier for Blinx to aim at said enemy. In practicality, the only function such a mechanic serves is to remove control from the player, as if there's more than one enemy in the area at once, the camera doesn't know which enemy to focus on, and will often fight between them. It's a minor annoyance throughout a majority of the game, but it only truly rears its ugly head in really tight areas where the camera will push up against walls and have a little seizure. Everwinter is primarily small rooms with a lot of shifting platforms and sliding floors. Every floor has ice physics, and every enemy takes about 3 hits to kill. It is the highest difficulty spike we've experienced so far. Each level has a difficulty rating. The rating system is a lie. 1 to 3 star levels are basically nothing unless it's a bomb level. For some reason they didn't factor bombs being in the floorboards into the difficulty rating. They didn't account for the jank either, but here we are. Every level in Everwinter is 5 stars, but honestly, factoring the jank, it should be higher. This is the stage that made me decide to give up. Of course, that isn't an option now. This is the demon that's been messing with me for over 20 years, and its name is Blinx. And they say that for once you know a demon's true name, you hold some power over it. It will try to kill you, directly or indirectly, but those who see the behaviors and know its patterns can navigate its attempts on your life. Cringe. The answer that I found is having a metric fuckton of pauses to prevent the floor from collapsing, since all of the sliding physics will try its hardest to push you into the pits that collapsed ice creates. It's very easy to become stuck in a loop of death with the rewind mechanic after taking damage if you don't have any charms to break the cycle. It's genuinely easier to go back to a previous level to collect charms where the ice physics doesn't cause you to slide into charms that you don't want, or just bump into walls in general, since ice will cause you to bump into walls and have Blinx fall on his ass. Or sometimes the ice will just cause him to fall on his ass anyway if you go too fast. There are some moments that could have been pretty cool if we could use the ice physics to generate momentum for the sake of making some jumps when the ice collapses, but there appears to be a speed cap which causes Blinx to slip and fall on the ice when he goes too fast. This just makes having the charms all the more necessary for all of the levels in this stage, really. The difference between spending 8 or 9 minutes on any other level that isn't from Everwinter and spending the same amount of minutes on Everwinter is that on every other level, your time doesn't feel like it's being wasted quite so much. When the game functions normally and you have the ability to take your time, as much time as you're allowed to take anyway, those 8 to 9 minutes don't feel quite so long. There's a constant forward momentum, and every action taken feels as if you're making progress. This isn't the case for Everwinter. It's a constant struggle where the smallest action of walking forward for 5 seconds feels like 30 seconds because we're constantly fighting with the controls. Add enemies into the mix with all of the jank. This stage only took about an hour to complete, which has been about my average for the previous 6 stages, but it felt like 2 hours. This is because it's genuinely faster to reset an entire level than to try and navigate a death loop. The slightest inconvenience is expanded into a situation that can cost several retries to fix, where resetting the entire level will give you back every retry you lost, and every charm used. I'm not sure if that's a feature or an oversight, and frankly I'm not sure which is worse. If it's a feature, then they plan for the player to be resetting often, which means they're not confident in their own level design. They know that it's too jank to be completely reasonable. If it's an oversight, then I guess we just add it to the jank pile and move on. The level after Everwinter is also really hard, but it's actually hard, not stupid hard. It's called The Forge of Hours, and it has some really damn good music. The level also relies heavily on the use of charms. I found myself going back to 1-1 after each level just to stock up on pauses for it. After the Forge lies the final boss in Momentopolis, and it's the dumbest shit I've ever had the displeasure of doing. I was right to give up last time, but not this time. This is punishment for half-assing shit before. The Tom Tom Gang plus girl fuse together into a giant time monster that has the ability to control time, and it sends us back to fight the 4 bosses that we've already killed. It's half of a boss rush. Thankfully, pressing reset doesn't actually reset the entire stage, just the boss that we're currently fighting, so that makes things a bit easier. I don't think that's actually the correct word. Maybe it is, but it's not the word that I want to use. And unfortunately, the word I want to use, I actually can't find in the dictionary because it probably doesn't exist. The point is, the shit dookie. I don't want to fight the last 4 bosses I just fought. It's a huge waste of time, especially since nothing changes about them. They're the exact same fight. The whole ordeal takes about 30 minutes to do just to get to the actual boss fight. Alright, gang. I'm gonna be real with you. My time between the last sentence for you has been about 2 seconds. For me, it's been about a month. Not because the boss was too hard. No, it didn't take me a month to beat it. It took me a month to work up the courage to boot up my Xbox again, knowing what awaited me on the other side. I knew that I would have to do the stupid little boss rush again before even having a chance at the final boss. This boss contains 4 phases, and it's the most unintuitive shit I've done in a long time, because just about everything this guy does goes against the rules that the game has been trying to teach us up to this point. The arena is a big circle. The boss circles it. Before the fight starts, it sucks up all of the charms that Blinx has, leaving us powerless in terms of magic. We've been taught by every enemy that flashing things cannot be hit, but this guy isn't flashing, and yet you still can't hit it. We've been taught by every enemy that shoots things that being hit hurts, but apparently not by this guy. In fact, the only time it can be hit is when it's shooting bombs out of its face. Shoot the eye, right? The thing that every game has been teaching us since 1980 fuck. Sure, I'll concede, but why the fuck can't we use magic? Magic usage has been completely removed from this fight. The thing that the game has been trying to get us to use this entire time has been made completely useless. I like that the boss can use our own magic against us. I think there's some really interesting back and forth that could be made by learning what to do versus what power. And if it were possible to use our charms to nullify the boss's magic in some way, I would welcome it. But the boss makes charms just not work, so the only course of action is to suck up bombs and shoot the eye and hopefully not get hit. The second phase creates a clone of the boss where you have to hit them both in the eye while they shoot bombs. If only one of them dies, the other just makes a clone and no damage is dealt. This phase also adds ice bombs into the mix that don't do anything beneficial for us. They just make the force slippery when they kaboom. They do not do boss damage. The third phase involves using one of each charms to break off armor from the boss and make it vulnerable. But Mr. Video Man, I thought you said magic was useless against the boss. You're right, I did. So technically I'm wrong, and now all of my previous points are invalid, is what I would say if there were more to this phase. The only way of dealing damage to the boss in Phase 3 is to collect one of each charm and use it. The power doesn't activate, the golem nullifies the magic, but it deals damage. That's all you have to do. You technically don't even have to move during this phase. Just hit the power button, wait for the invincibility period to end, and then use the next power. That's it. Once the rocky exterior is broken, the green little shrimp fuck only takes one hit to kill, and that's the fourth phase done. Once the boss dies, the Tom Tom gang and the girl get spit out, and Blinx carries the girl off somewhere safe. I still don't know who she is. Blinx calls her princess. Princess of what? I don't know. The realm? The town? Who cares? There's a sequel that I'm trying to find because I hate myself. That's not true. I just like talking about things no one really cares about. My name is Box. The script is too long. Please like and subscribe and have a wonderful day.